It was fascinating that Jenna said that the government side is not goving the motion. Because where I come from, capture or kill is different from Israeli-English bilateral cooperation agreement. This debate is about Israel going into Argentina and capturing and killing Adolf Eichmann. Deal with that reality. It's perfectly defensible for any other number of reasons, but don't evade the topic. Let's actually deal with that topic. 3 questions. Does this policy achieve justice for victims, which should be a singular priority? How does this policy impact Israel's diplomatic leverage? And how will this policy impact Israel's self-perception? So does this policy achieve justice for victims? The opening opposition argued that this policy is necessary for restorative justice. Restorative justice presumes that you can restore the victim to the status they had before this crime was committed. These are crimes that were committed 70 years ago. The emotional harm was immense, but it has been suffered. We think for many victims, they don't actually gain that much from trying an old man on the verge of death. What's significant is also the way that these people are actually dealt with. Because if we accept half the motion involves killing these people, ladies and gentlemen, these victims don't actually achieve justice. All they find out is that some guy died. They're not necessarily put on trial. Their crimes aren't actually investigated. The impact that was committed to others isn't necessarily come out onto the historical record. That kind of justice doesn't exist. But let's be very clear on the closing government. Of course we accept that some victims and some families will gain closure through killing these people or through capturing these people. All we are arguing is rejecting the assertion that this is universally the case. And let's be very clear about who we're trying in this debate. The example of Milosevic that was relied on by the opposition misses the point. There isn't just like a Goebbels just floating around or just forgotten about for the last 7 years. The key perpetrators of the Holocaust have been captured or killed long before this date, ladies and gentlemen. We think we do have an accurate historical record of the major perpetrators and the crimes that they committed. We think, in recognition of that, the benefit to victims that they alluded to simply isn't as significant as they tried to make it. What we heard from the opposition in their extension was this will help stopping the spread of anti-Semitism in these companies. Like, we firstly question whether there's this huge band of like renegade 90-year-olds that are fomenting anti-Jewish uprisings in their countries, ladies and gentlemen. We think if you're a war criminal fleeing to another country, you're probably going to try and stay out of the way as much as possible. Reduce the attention to yourself, reduce the risk that you'll be captured or killed, ladies and gentlemen. Moreover, if they're captured, these people may deny the crimes or gain public sympathy for being prosecuted by Israel despite being old and possibly on the verge of death. We don't think that's a good thing for anti-Semitism. We don't think that's a good thing for the perception of Israel. We think there's plenty of other ways to say that anti-Semitism is never okay, ladies and gentlemen, such as saying anti-Semitism is never okay, rather than requiring these types of prosecutions. I'll take over.
Okay, given that you've said we've got this really great, accurate historical record of the major perpetrators, and actually some of these major perpetrators, as we've shown you, are still at large, have you just contradicted opening's claim that it's very difficult to prosecute these people effectively, some of them will be acquitted?
Okay, let me be very clear. We accept that you're not going to get perfect historical accuracy through our plan. We accept that you're not going to get perfect retribution through our plan. Our case is that's okay because there's other values at stake in this debate. We think when it's true that justice for victims is not absolutely achieved, that needs to be contrasted with other values that are relevant to the debate. The first is the interest of justice, ladies and gentlemen. We think there's a reason in society itself vengeance is not centralised in the victim. Israel is not capable of objectivity when it goes into another country and tries to kill or capture these people. That crime was propagated, or people believe, against the Israeli state itself. We think what's much preferable is when that's centralised in the country itself, making a choice whether to prosecute or not. Moreover, in terms of killing people, ladies and gentlemen, there's no due process there. You destroy people's liberty without any fairness, without any mechanism to ensure they're actually guilty or deserve that particular sentence rather than any other sentence reducing that. No, thank you. Let's be very clear as well. This isn't consistent with international law. This debate isn't about cooperation with like America or whatever, ladies and gentlemen. This debate is saying that Israel can override the sovereignty of countries, send its troops into another country's borders and dispense justice, whether that's through capturing or killing these people. We think countries react incredibly badly to that. We think that violation of sovereignty is incredibly unpopular. We saw the strain on the diplomatic relationship between Israel and key countries like Britain, ladies and gentlemen, when Israel tried to take over passports of agents to go into those countries and actually kill people that they thought were acting with Hamas, ladies and gentlemen. We think that's disastrous. So, does this policy impact Israel's diplomatic leverage? At opening, we heard that this policy, at opening government, we heard that this policy would be unpopular and reduce Israel's political capital. At closing, we gave you the reasons for that. Let's look at why Israel is actually unpopular in the international community. We accept that on one level, it's anti-Semitism. Some countries are just racist. Nothing's going to change that. We accept that, ladies and gentlemen. But not all opponents of Israel are anti-Semitic. Some countries are opposed to Israel because they see Israel as a consistent violator of international law, willing to always prioritize their interest in security or their interest in vengeance above international norms, like national sovereignty, like rule of law, like respecting another country's justice system and ability to make choices on who to prosecute. We think through the examples, like the attempt to kill Mishal overseas, like Mossad appropriating foreign passports for assassination attempts, even like Operation Cast Lead, ladies and gentlemen. Israel prioritized its interest and its interest in security above the diplomatic norm that another country's sovereignty is sacrosanct unless there's an immediate risk that justifies that. The impact of Israel publicly renouncing this particular policy, ladies and gentlemen, is its public commitment to not allowing its interest to overwhelm the sovereignty of other countries. We're not saying that this is going to totally change the international community's perception of Israel. But what it does do is it undermines that narrative that Israel is unconcerned about international law, unconcerned about national sovereignty, and will do whatever it takes to promote the interests that it formed through the Holocaust. It gives political cover to supporters of Israel, like those in the United States, to show that Israel is sometimes willing to prioritize international law and respecting another country's borders above its own national interests. Does this say Israel is giving up, ladies and gentlemen? Not at all. It just says that we're not violating sovereignty any longer. We don't think the US actually cares that much about whether Israel is saying it's giving up. They care about its own borders being violated by Israel in making this choice, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, in terms of Israel's self-perception, we think it's a harmful narrative within Israel that the Holocaust justifies any policy, ladies and gentlemen. We think that perception of victimization is justified in the context of where Israel sits in the region. We need to undermine the notion that Israel can do anything it wants, ladies and gentlemen, without having consequences. We think we need to change the narrative by having a competing view on Israel which prioritizes these alternative values. Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, justice for victims is complex, can be achieved to a certain extent through the opposition's plan. But there's other important values at stake in this debate. That's what we stand behind.